Good morning and happy Saturday. Today is the 6th, I believe. And no, it's the 4th. My bad. And what a difference a week makes. We have actually, this is like the first time all winter in southern New England where we're actually in real snow. It's about 33. It's not really that bad. There's a lot of wind though. So, and for sound readings, are going to probably be fairly significant today due to the wind. And about well, actually, what do we got? Like probably 6 inches of snow up here, and we're in the northern the northwest vigilance area, northeastern vigilance area, whatever I call it. And you can tell I'm like really just like bound by protocol today. We're gonna get going. We got literally 6 inches of fresh snow, so tracking is the order of the day. That's what we're going to do, and we'll see what we find. That's the intended mission, and I'm happy I was able to get up here because this snow was like fresh from last night, so I didn't know what the road conditions were going to be like. But the plows actually seem to get out here pretty early, so I'll be able to get in, get out, get some decent tracking in, if nothing else, and we'll see where we go. Come along for the ride, and thanks. And we're back. I'm going to apologize in advance for the hucking and coughing. I still have 5% of a cold fighting to go away. So gossip fodder while it's on my mind. We have stuff like that. We have in gossip fodder, Steve Coles did his little Squatch TV thing, and he was talking about don't let the skeptics fool you. I'm wondering, I haven't seen that yet, but I'm wondering if he's following in the Michael Merchant steps of like calling out the serial debunker people, which I had a rant or two in the last few weeks about. The other one, a couple of things that came up on, one on the Bigfoot forums, a forum that I do have a very limited respect for because just past dealings with them and their admins, they call themselves a discussion forum, but I would beg to differ. They're a discussion forum if you kiss the derriere of the entrenched members, and by entrenched member I mean the people who have basically been on this forum for 20 years because apparently they have nothing better to do and, you know, have a gazillion posts there. So we have some tracks here. Let me, this is nothing overly exotic. You're basically dealing with a squirrel because as you can see, runs right up to the tree right there. Second set I've seen of them. Sorry, and in addition to that, it's the only tracks I've found so far. But the day's young. But they had some subjects on their forum. Yeah, the classic, what does the BLM, what does the government actually know about Bigfoot, and why are they covering it up? Well, a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, if they are covering it up, the answer is very simple. Money. I don't know how much revenue is derived from backpacker traffic through the national parks playing into the Polites shtick of 411 stuff. And I do treat his material with a very healthy bit of skepticism because I actually have compared his version of some actual missing persons cases I'm aware of local to where I have hiked versus the actual official record of what's on the books for that. And he does take some liberties with the facts. So, as much as his loyal following loves him to death, you know, grain of salt when it comes to yours truly in his direction. Him and Steve Isdall and then Scott Carpenter, who's the other person in their cabal. Excuse me, I apologize. Just the effects of like labored walking through fairly deep, well, moderately deep snow, and trying to factor through snot in your nose that your cold is making for you. So there's that. My take on it is money. Not necessarily forestry service kind of money, like park money. Although there are some things going on with that that make the government seem... There's a whole thing in the drone community where if you're a monetized YouTube channel, you have to get a permit. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. I think more out west than... Because I've actually Googled the larger national parks in my neck of the woods. And I haven't been able to find where they're talking about a fee structure just for photography in the national parks. Whereas out west, you've got a money grab going on with... this is kind of Bigfoot relevant, but it's... They're basically making an argument that if you're doing commercial photography out in a national park, you know, the government wants their cut too. If you're somebody like me, just walking around with a simple vlogging camera, I'm going to be on public record right now when it warms up and I get back into Vermont, where I am in a national forest, that I'm one guy walking around with a camera doing things on a completely non-monetary basis. I have absolutely no intention of getting a permit for anything, because what I'm doing is First Amendment right. What I'm doing is the exercising of a First Amendment right, and the government has no goddamn right to fine me or charge me for the expression of that right. And if they see this quotation down the road and they want to talk about it, I will tell them very happily to kiss my ass during that time. What I'm doing is a First Amendment right, and you have absolutely no reason to think you're going to charge me money to express that right. And that is the argument I'll take to court. I'm not operating a business. I am not claiming to do a documentary. I am vlogging my hiking experiences while I'm out in the woods. Thoroughly non-monetary, thoroughly just expressing a hobby through videography, and not subject to federal fees. It won't be, because I will not pay you motherfuckers a cent. Pardon my French. It's not going to happen. It's kind of distressing that the pond out there... Hey, the zoom works today. Cool. Looks like the entire pond is piss yellow right now. That's nasty. Just thought you ought to see that. So we can share the horror of the piss yellow fishing pond. Although the last time I fished here, I bothered the bullfrogs and didn't really accomplish anything else. Anyway, that's one thing going on. And again, follow the money, because if they do know they're out there and they're concerned, the money that's being disrupted by any considerations with this would be that of Big Timber. And where the government becomes involved in that is Big Timber out west has lobbying values, and that's where the government's going to be involved. They're going to have people... This is your government at work, and I have worked for the federal government, and I am not the biggest fan of the federal government. I'm not a raging... I'm just going to express some politics here, and then I'll stop. I am not a card-carrying liberal. I am not a raging Q-tard either. Fuck Q. QAnon is for the ranting of the insane. And I am not in either camp. I'm not a woke extremist. I'm not a freaking Q-tard. And that's literally what they are. And fuck you if you don't like it. This is interesting. Right here. Bear sign. From the look of it, bear clawing up a tree. Interesting. The thing is, I bet you $10 we don't find a single bear track while we're out here. But that is proof that bears do not, in fact, hibernate all winter. When it gets warm enough, their stomachs will growl and they will wake up and go out looking for food, which is why even in the dead of winter you carry bear mace. Just so you know. Why would the government cover up Bigfoot? big timber lobbying and money. Because if you have the sudden discovery of a humanoid population of near humans going by what the government... Because the thing is, if the government is protecting lobbyist money, they're going to try to make the creature as non-human as they can. But a close relative to humans, like if you were to suddenly find a gorilla population in the Northwest, you still have... You're going to have PETA and all the activists come out and say you have to protect them. You know, it's not a request. You have no option. You're doing it. You want me paying taxes, you do what I tell you, kind of thing. And, yeah, they're going to play it down and try to make Bigfoot into some pongid thing. Pongid meaning ape-like as opposed to hominid. You have pongonid and hominid. Hominid is more like Neanderthal. I'm trying to think of, I'm not butchering the name. What the hell's the name of one? Homo erectus, I'll throw that out there, as a pre-human humanoid. Not something that was ape-like on all fours, but something that actually looked kind of sort of human and walked upright on two legs and carried a club. Knew enough to make you... You know, some humanoids knew fire, some didn't, but 90% of them were tool-using and, you know, could pretty much make an axe or a freaking dagger out of a sharp rock or something, and they weren't, you know, they weren't making atomic bombs, but they were smart enough to know how to make basic tools. So in that regard, with the wind blowing, is it smart to be under all these trees? Well, hopefully I'm feeling agile if I hear a cracking sound. Anyway, that's why they would cover up the existence of Bigfoot, because you have a near human population of things that when they are discovered will have had a hell of a run hiding right under our nose, if you think about it. Number one. Number two, you know, you have these scenarios painted where you have like big timber with almost like bounty hunters out there hunting them and trying to get rid of them, and the evidence, and I could actually see that. Why? Because you'd be surprised how far people will go to protect profits. If you were out there with a team of these alleged, you know, BF hunters, like literal hunters, and they knew that you knew where a population was, would they murder you to make you get out of the way? Yeah. I think you're naive if you think otherwise. Especially if they know that you're out there and you know that they are, and you know what they're doing. I'm sure if there's some contract, official or otherwise, with the timber companies, you know, there's an accident happens clause to people that happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. No doubt of that. The other subject, and this plays kind of into the whole Paulides thing. I'm going to actually go into a rant against him a little bit too, before moving on. The 411 themed stuff where the other theme was, well, do old decrepit big feets like take advantage of lone hikers, kind of like me out here by myself right now, and kill us for food. Of the many thousands of Bigfoot reports I've seen, there's not a single one that I'm aware of that follows that model. There's a couple where the big feets, I really hate that word. Screw moneymaker for making that the standard term. It should be Sasquatch with a plural form. Anyway, my own Bigfoot-related bigotries aside, there's a few where a person like the Osterman, I think his name was, story where, yes, Bigfoot finds you out camping alone in the woods and grabs your sleeping bag with you in it and takes you back to camp. There's another one with an Indian guy, a Native American dude in Canada that went through the same thing. And both of these kind of read the same way, but what ends up happening in relation to, you know, they don't get eaten by the big feets. They kind of, get taken to the middle of camp and dumped out in front of all the big feets, who are kind of like mildly curious for a bit. And once they poked you around and kind of saw what you were, they get bored with you and go back to doing, big feet stuff. At which point the two people basically were able to slink away and run back home. Really no muss, no fuss. But there's no evidence in either of these cases where, if they're even true, where Bigfoot killed an ape. There was one story where they were trappers, I think, and the one guy went to go check the traps or something, and he comes back and he finds his buddy in camp dead, presumably killed by a Bigfoot. Mauled and kind of beaten up and all that, but not eaten. But not eaten. So, based on the evidence that I am aware of, I would argue the evidence points against that we're not on the menu. That may be more likely, and this does actually happen with creatures of a similar nature in nature, where you have the killing of competition. If big feet are seen as predators out in the natural scheme of things, and they see hunters out there, they are probably unwanted competition. So I've heard a couple of stories where you're walking back to the truck after you scored a deer carcass, and your friend is waiting along the path, and he, through body language and intimidation, makes it very clear, yeah, you can go. You're leaving that behind if you know it's good for you. Or they'll walk right up to the truck as you're loading up and grab it, sling it over their shoulder, and walk away with it. They'll basically mug you for dinner. That sort of makes more sense. Now, getting to Paulides, who is the chief prophet of this kind of mindset and these kinds of stories, I'm not going to get into the whole Squatch Chronicles Wes Germer thing, because it's enough to pick a potential fight with one cultish group of people in the community. You heard me, Wes. I said what I said. So I'm looking around real quick, and I know the snow is fresh and all, but I'm not really seeing a lot of tracks out here. So when I do inevitably get my hunting license in the spring, I may not come here to hunt or go further in over that way, because I'm not seeing a lot here. At least not this time. I have seen bobcat sign in here and the things. I've seen moose tracks on the other side of the creek over there, but today I'm not really seeing a lot. Not even a set of deer tracks yet. Yeah, so I saw a quotation recently, and this is enough to annoy somebody based just on simple principle. There was a case of a missing person in a national park somewhere, and Paulides is directly quoted saying, well, it could be they just walked into a portal. So if this is any indication, Dave has moved from, killer big feets carrying off people to be devoured in the bushes to the Dr. Zorth portal nonsense. And again, I know a guy who who has claimed that at one point he had pictures of portals. By all means, I'd love to see them. My standing agreement with a couple of the people that I know from the woo side of the aisle in the community is, you want me to believe in the same stuff you do, show me something. You got a picture of a portal, by all means, let me see it. Not the colonoscopy picture that freaking Dr. Zorth pulled thinking that people are going to be that stupid. Real, actual photos of something that's a gateway to another world, by all means. You show me that and I'll open my eyes to it, if it's convincing enough. The other thing there, those were the two things on the Bigfoot forums. Again, I have a history there. I think a lot of people do, actually. If you run asunder. This is the sad thing on any given discussion forum, and I can throw the JREF or the International Skeptics Forum under the bus with this too. There are certain cool kids on those forums, and this was always the flaw of the forum system before Facebook became the norm, which is a different good and bad. But if you run afoul of the cool kids, or you're espousing a belief set that's different than theirs, they're going to ban you because you're killing their narrative. And you know, that harshes their buzz, and they don't want to hear that. If you are on the Bigfoot forums and you run afoul of Hunster, I'll just name names because it's not their real name, or Norseman and a few others, apparently you are instantaneous scum. And you know, you're not being polite. No, you're not kissing their ass, which, you know, I'm sorry, I have things to do. I'm an adult like they are. If they're, you know, they're out there on a forum, a website, if you will, you know, big game hunter, or that's your persona online. There was a long tabber guy who was claiming to be ex-military, like stolen valor and all this. Made all these lovely claims about being, I think, ex-black ops and stuff too. Turns out he's a pig farmer. Somebody actually tracked him down. He's a pig farmer. I had a chat with him once in the PMs. Nice enough guy, but he's a pig farmer. So, you know, it's that age-old aspect of being anonymous on the internet. You can be pretty much whoever the hell. If you want to be a 16-year-old girl and you're a 48-year-old guy, you know, you're a weirdo, but okay. You know, but that is why I will not be using the stick as a wood knocker. It's not going to work too well, is it? Anyway, moving on to a Facebook group instead, you have, and this is always a fun one. Now, the video that was pointed to does not make the argument that Bigfoot is descended from Giganto. And that is because Bigfoot is not descended from Giganto. But it kind of lured me into a repetition of my rant about why Bigfoot is not Giganto. Because once upon a time, the illustrious Jeff Meldrum, the Bigfooting scientist to the stars, and he was backed vigorously by Rick Knoll, a guy whose claim to fame, even though he is like a long-time famous Bigfooter, allegedly. Lovely wood pop over here. His claim to fame is the Skookum elk dent, which, whether he likes it or not, is what that is. And I think he was involved in the Loudon Trackway hoax. So, I mean, here's a guy, and his claim to fame is he's been hoaxed twice. Which kind of calls into question, at least in my world, why are you a famous Bigfooter if your whole claim to fame is being hoaxed? That does raise some questions, some very So you look at a lot of the celebrity Bigfooters out there, just to go and beat an old horse, to piss a few people off. Yeah, and today we're kind of sort of picking on Meldrum. I've talked to him online, don't get me wrong, very nice guy. He is. But, you know, for all the people, well, what he says is like, no, he's been proven wrong before. And as much as he is a nice guy, he is also a guy who, in this day and age, within at least relating to the community, is more celebrity Bigfooter than he is scientist. Because, unfortunately, he's at the forum, he's at the conferences, and he's getting speakers' fees, and he is basically hawking fake track casts, or imitation ones. Copies, if you will. And that's not science work. That's you cashing in on the Bigfoot thing. Like, I mean, and like everyone else does, so I'm not gonna like throw you on the cross over it, but especially since I think you're a Mormon. No shade to Mormons, but you know, you may do things differently in that particular fold. But you know, has he produced a body? Has he produced like DNA? No. He's another guy looking like the rest of us, and unfortunately that's the truth of it. And a lot of people get really pissy when you point that out, which to this day amuses the hell out of me, because, you know, you attack the sacred cow's defenders come a-running with the machetes and the torches and the pitchforks. But if that's all you got, then maybe you need to look a little harder for something else. Just saying. And, you know, and they also reference Cliff Barackman. Cliff Barackman, I have met Cliff Barackman. Cliff Barackman is the nicest guy in the world. He has a Midwestern nice guy's charm, genuinely nice guy. I've met him and Bobo at one of the Finding Bigfoot town hall things. And they are both very nice guys. I'll also say of Bobo, he does not play a character. Having met him in real life, Bobo is Bobo. That's neither here nor there. It's not good, bad, or indifferent. It's just that genuinely is who the guy is. And probably why the kids love him. Because, you know, that's just, he's like their lovable, you know, gentle giant big brother. Or at least he was before he had the massive weight loss, in which case, you know, all the power to you for getting your health and all that, but you do look night and day after that. Just saying. Again, I will attempt not to abuse that saying. But at one time, Rick Knoll and Jeff Meldrum were talking about Giganto. What we do know of Giganto is that it was a largely vegetarian ape, like basically a ginormous King Kong-sized freaking orangutan-looking thing, with probably a 99% freaking bamboo diet, living in the jungles of what now is Vietnam. So, a largely herbivorous or omnivore, but favoring what it had in that jungle. I would also question if that's what his major diet was, what the nutritional value of that is. So it's basically a grazer more than a hunter. And for a creature of that nature to just pick up its roots and travel across at least some of which was glacier and tundra, a polar opposite of its tropical jungle environment. Think about that for a minute. And then wander across all that territory. How did it not freeze to death or starve to death or simply get preyed upon or outcompeted